The stars lay cold and remote in the endless void of space as Admiral Vexar stood upon the bridge of his colossal warship. The Sovereign's wrath was the pride of the Zephyran Empire, a titanic vessel capable of erasing entire worlds with ease. Around it swarmed dozens of escorts, each painted in the deep imperial purple of the Navy. They had been patrolling this quadrant for 3 long months, ensuring no one dared question the Empire's supremacy. Vexar was a tall reptilian with scales shimmering gold and green beneath the bridge lights. His piercing yellow eyes scanned the displays with the certainty of one who had never tasted defeat. For 3 centuries, the Zephyrians had dominated this region of space, and none had ever been reckless enough to oppose them. 17 star systems bent to their will, their fleets dreaded across the galaxy. The bridge was hushed save for the steady hum of systems and the periodic chirp of sensors. Young officers worked diligently, each proud to serve aboard the Admiral's flagship. They wore the black dress of the Imperial Navy, their chests adorned with medals proving loyalty to the throne. None expected anything noteworthy to disturb this day. Far from the Imperial fleet, hidden in the frozen gulf between suns, another craft drifted silently. Unlike the purple dreadnoughts of the Zephyrians, this vessel was sleek and silver, its smooth design flowing like water. Strange blue lights pulsed across its hull in intricate rhythms no Imperial machine could decipher. Though smaller than the Sovereign's wrath, it carried an air of danger, like a predator waiting to strike. On its bridge, Captain Jake Sullivan studied the enemy fleet upon his screens. A tall man with dark hair and calm brown eyes, his uniform was plain and practical, stripped of the ostentation Zephyran officers adored. His crew worked quietly around him, all human, from a world the Empire had never encountered. Amy Carter manned sensors, her blonde hair tied back as she concentrated on the readings. Young yet talented, she was among the finest in the Terran Federation, her fingers gliding swiftly across controls as she gathered alien data. Pete Morris, the engineer, stood near the rear of the bridge, an older man with gray hair and work-roughened hands. He monitored power levels closely, ensuring the stealth field remained stable. The Liberty's Edge had roamed the stars for 8 months, charting this unexplored frontier, hunting for traces of intelligence. They had discovered several curious worlds and ancient ruins upon a dead planet. But this was their first contact with a living civilization, and Sullivan intended caution. Lisa Jang, tactical officer, was slight in frame but sharp-eyed, versed in every weapon and defense known to humankind. Now she dissected the alien vessels, studying their armaments. Dan Parker, communications chief, a cheerful man fluent in 17 tongues, strained to decode the alien chatter, hoping for understanding. At science, Dr. Kate Robinson, her red hair blazing under the bridge glow, leaned forward with anticipation. A xenobiologist by training, she had dreamed of this, her entire life, the chance to meet another sentient species. She stared with awe at the fleet, though danger loomed. The Imperial formation advanced in flawless order, purple hulls gleaming beneath distant suns. Admiral Vexar remained unaware of unseen eyes. His scanners still reported only void, just as they had for months. The Zephyrians boasted of unmatched technology, but none had faced stealth systems like humanity's. Suddenly, a young officer hissed an alarm from the sensor pit. Vexar turned sharply, tail lashing with interest. The officer indicated a faint blip at the far edge of detection. It resembled a ship, yet it drifted without motion or power. Vexar strode forward to study the readout. It was clearly a vessel, of some kind, but not one his records could identify. Too large for a freighter, too small for a battleship. Most unsettling, its composition was made of alloys their computers could not classify. Vexar ordered his fleet to alter course toward the strange signal. He was intrigued, though not alarmed. In 3 centuries, the Zephyrian Empire had faced countless species, and everyone had ultimately learned obedience to imperial might. This unknown craft was likely just another primitive intruder, straying into their dominion by mistake. As the Imperial formation closed in, Captain Sullivan weighed his choice. He instructed his crew to hold their position, continuing observation. The Liberty's Edge carried formidable weapons and defenses, yet Sullivan hoped restraint would suffice. His mission was one of discovery, not war. Amy Carter reported the aliens were sweeping them with some kind of energy scan, but their stealth array endured. The Imperials could not pierce the advanced systems shielding the human ship. Pete Morris confirmed all systems remained optimal, and their concealment could be sustained indefinitely. The Zephyrian flotilla reached the zone where their scanners marked the anomaly. Admiral Vexar glared through the viewport, but beyond lay only starlight and emptiness. His crew checked their consoles repeatedly, baffled by conflicting results. The vessel was undeniably present. Its mass and heat signature proved it. Yet, it remained unseen. Such technology exceeded anything the Empire possessed. Unease crept through Vexar's mind. He had ruled this sector for 20 years, facing countless foes, always victorious. But this phantom ship was different. For the first time in his career, he questioned if something existed that might threaten the Empire itself. Restless, Vexar stalked his bridge like a predator caged, claws clattering on metal as he paced. The invisible ship hovered before them, and still they could not lay eyes upon it. Never before had he known such a challenge. His scales shifted hue with anger and frustration. Among Zephyrians, uncertainty equaled weakness, and weakness was forbidden. His strength, his reputation, rested on decisiveness. But how did one fight? An enemy unseen? His science officer, a younger Zephyrian with bright azure scales, approached timidly. The officer explained in a nervous hiss that the ship registered on their most advanced sensors, but some unknown force blocked their optics. It was as though the vessel both existed and did not exist. Vexar snarled at the suggestion, intolerant of riddles. To him, all problems had one answer: overwhelming firepower. He commanded 3 heavy cruisers into flanking formation, forming a trap that would hold the target regardless of escape path. Aboard the Liberty's Edge, Captain Sullivan observed the maneuver calmly. The tactical display marked the cruisers' positions, while the main fleet lingered behind, prepared to strike. It was a textbook tactic, one taught in humanity's first year of military training. Lisa Jang analyzed alien armaments, plasma batteries and energy torpedoes capable of breaching most armor. Their shields were tough but not unbreakable. More troubling was their sheer number. Facing so many opponents at once would be perilous. Amy Carter reported the aliens had begun broadcasting across multiple channels. Dan Parker labored to decode the transmissions, feeding them through the translation algorithms. The speech was mostly hisses and clicks, alien to the human ear, but patterns were emerging. Dr. Robinson leaned forward, captivated by her first glimpse of extraterrestrial beings, reptilian in form. Their scales shifted color with emotion. Their warships bore heavy plating and weapons that seemed both crude and deadly. She pondered their culture, wondering if reason could prevail. Pete Morris checked energy reserves again. The stealth shroud held strong, but its power draw was immense. Hours remained before it would fail, but a choice had to be made soon. He hoped the captain would act swiftly. Admiral Vexar, unwilling to wait further, resolved to force a confrontation. He activated wide-spectrum communications, broadcasting, in 17 tongues spoken across the Zephyrian dominion. His message was blunt and imperious: reveal yourselves at once, or suffer annihilation. The Admiral's words rang with the authority of 3 centuries of imperial dominance. That same commanding tone had compelled countless foes to yield, never once failing. Pirates, insurgents, rival powers, Each had bowed to that voice and the might it carried. But Captain Sullivan was unmoved by alien threats. He had faced greater perils during his service to the Terran Federation. What troubled him was the hostile stance of the fleet and their clear readiness for battle. His hope for a peaceful encounter was fading. These aliens seemed the type to strike first and negotiate later. Dan Parker finally cracked enough of their language to grasp the ultimatum. The beings called themselves the Zephyrian Empire and demanded surrender for inspection. They appeared to claim this entire sector, branding all outsiders trespassers. Sullivan summoned his senior staff to the command table. The situation was growing dire, and a decision had to be made quickly. Lisa Jiang urged disclosure and an attempt at negotiation, while Amy Carter advised withdrawal before escalation. Dr. Robinson argued passionately to stay. Contact with an intelligent alien race was too vital to abandon. Pete Morris worried the stealth field might fail, leaving them exposed to overwhelming numbers. Sullivan weighed each perspective carefully before reaching a conclusion. They would attempt peace once. If it failed, they would fight. Dan Parker was tasked with composing a message in the alien's own tongue, presenting the Liberty's Edge as a peaceful exploratory craft of the Terran Federation. The words were chosen with care, carrying no hint of aggression. Sullivan gave his name and rank, explained their mission of exploration, and requested dialogue. He offered cultural and technological exchange in return for knowledge of the Zephyrian Empire. When Admiral Vexar received this reply, he froze. The invisible ship had not only answered, but in flawless high command dialect, a restricted military language known only to imperial elites. How could strangers possess their most guarded code? His bewilderment burned swiftly into fury. This could only be deception. Perhaps rebels using stolen encryption, or worse, a spy vessel sent by a rival power to gather intelligence. Whatever the truth, it could not be allowed to escape with such secrets. Vexar made his choice, one that would alter everything. He ordered the fleet to unleash its full arsenal. If these enemies sought to hide behind exotic tricks, he would crush them with raw force. The void around the Liberty's Edge exploded with blinding light as the Zephyrian fleet fired in unison. Plasma cannons hurled torrents of burning gas across the darkness, while energy torpedoes streaked like falling stars toward the unseen foe. The combined onslaught of 67 warships could fracture continents, and all of it converged on a single patch of space. From his command, Deus, Admiral Vexar watched the storm rage, the brilliance of their weapons blazing like a newborn sun. Surely nothing could endure such devastation, not even a phantom vessel shielded by mysterious technology. He expected wreckage to scatter across the void, proof of imperial supremacy. But when the last echoes of destruction faded and the guns fell silent, the impossible occurred. The void remained unbroken, the targeted sector still empty. Yet the sensors continued to report detected the strange vessel. It was still present, completely unharmed, as though the entire bombardment had never occurred. An unseen barrier had absorbed every cannon blast, torpedo, and beam of deadly energy. Captain Sullivan felt the Liberty's Edge shiver faintly as the alien assault impacted its defensive fields. The ship's systems instantly redirected power to compensate for the tremendous influx. On his display, the hostile fleet was still firing relentlessly, flooding space with destruction against their impregnable defenses. Pete Morris called out data from engineering. The shields held with ease, shrugging off the barrage without strain. To local standards, the Zephyrian weapons were formidable, yet compared to human defenses, they were centuries obsolete. It would take a far greater arsenal to even graze the Liberty's Edge. Lisa Jiang studied enemy patterns through her console. Plasma-based batteries and a graviton torpedo system, respectable but ordinary. Their fire control was decent, though hardly exceptional, and weapon yields were lower than she expected. she began to see the truth. Their dominance in this sector came not from superiority, but isolation. Dr. Robinson observed with scientific wonder. The weapons discharged in disciplined rhythms, evidence of a hardened, well-trained force. Their vessels maneuvered like a synchronized shoal, each in perfect position. Whatever else these beings were, they had clearly waged many wars. Amy Carter monitored their frantic communications, hearing the mounting panic. The hisses and clicks grew sharper as commanders demanded answers for their failure. None could fathom why their quarry endured untouched. Captain Sullivan made a decision. He would never forget. The aliens had fired first at a peaceful mission, rejecting every offer of dialogue. They had chosen hostility over diplomacy, force over understanding. Humanity had no choice now but to defend itself. He turned to Lisa Jang with the order he had dreaded. The Liberty's Edge would retaliate, precisely to disable rather than annihilate. These aliens, though aggressive, were still sentient beings who deserved a chance to learn. In moments, the transformation was complete. An explorer became a predator. Hidden weapon bays yawned open, targeting arrays locked on, and power conduits shifted from research equipment to combat systems. Humanity's warship stood revealed in its terrible majesty. Admiral Vexar registered the shift before he fully comprehended it. The phantom vessel blazed across sensors, its energy output surpassing every Imperial measure. This was no scout ship. It was something far greater. The first human strike was surgical. An invisible beam of coherent energy lanced into the Sovereign's wrath, frying its primary cannon banks in an instant. The Admiral's flagship shuddered, its mighty guns silenced. What followed was no battle, but a demonstration. The Terran vessel moved with impossible agility, its engines defying known science. Again and again it fired, each shot disabling. Precise systems. Engines here, shields there, ship after ship. Within minutes, the Imperial fleet was crippled. Weapons went dead. Shields collapsed. Drives ceased. Yet not a single vessel was destroyed. No crews perished. The alien ship had reduced their armada to powerless hulks without spilling blood, a restraint more terrifying than destruction itself. Lisa Jang worked steadily, her weapons designed to pierce all defenses and disable components surgically. She could have annihilated the fleet in moments, but her orders demanded discipline. The Zephyrians stared in disbelief as their might was unraveled. Officers who had never faced defeat now floated helplessly, their systems beyond repair. Admiral Vexar stood frozen, powerless, as his flagship bled strength piece by piece. Weapons fell silent, then shields, then engines. Red emergency lights painted his bridge as the Empire's pride became a dark husk adrift. The encounter, if it could be called a battle, lasted exactly 18 minutes. When the battle was over, 67 Imperial warships floated, powerless in the void, their crews alive, yet utterly incapacitated. The Liberty's Edge drifted slowly among the ruined vessels, its scanners sweeping for signs of critical damage or threats to life. Captain Sullivan opened a wide band channel, his voice calm and unwavering as it reached across the shattered fleet. He spoke not only to Admiral Vexar, but to every soul who could still hear him. What he said in that moment would alter the balance of power in this sector forever. One lone human ship had shown that the mighty Zetherian Empire was no longer the supreme force it had believed itself to be. Sullivan's words carried over every functioning frequency, his tone respectful and composed, with not a trace of arrogance or triumph. In fluent Zephyrian, he addressed the enemy, his voice echoing across the fractured silence of space. Shock rippled through Thelian crews as this stranger from an impossible ship began explaining who his people were and why they had come to this region. He introduced himself as Captain Jake Sullivan of the Terran Federation vessel Liberty's Edge. He told them humans came from a world called Earth, far out in what the aliens labeled the Outer Spiral Arm. Humanity had spent long years reaching for the stars, searching for others like themselves, hoping to meet civilizations they might learn from and befriend. His words held genuine sorrow as he admitted their first contact had unfolded in bloodshed. The Liberty's Edge, he said, was not a warship, but an exploration vessel sent to discover, to learn, to connect. They had only raised their weapons when attacked without warning. Sullivan stressed that humans preferred dialogue to violence, Andreessen over destruction. Admiral Vexar listened in growing disquiet, his thoughts twisting in knots of fear and disbelief. The being speaking Tohim had just crippled an Imperial battle group with technology that defied every known law of physics, yet it claimed Toby a peaceful wanderer. 67 warships had been disabled in minutes, their weapons and shields rendered useless, but the voice on the channel spoke only of regret, diplomacy, and understanding. The Admiral's communication officer managed to patch through a limited emergency link to Imperial Command. With urgency, Vexar dictated a desperate report, an encounter with a ship that should not exist, its weapons beyond comprehension. But, even as he transmitted, he knew his superiors would dismiss his words as exaggeration or madness. Meanwhile, Sullivan continued his broadcast to the enemy fleet. He offered aid, assuring them that human medical science was advanced, capable of helping injured crew members recover. To prove his sincerity, he began sharing detailed technical schematics for repairing the damage his weapons had caused. At the medical station, Dr. Robinson's scanners swept over the disabled ships, her instruments tuned for signs of mortal danger. Most life readings showed stability, though many crews suffered from trauma, shock, and minor wounds from sudden system collapse. She immediately prepared adaptable supplies and treatments, fine-tuning them for Zapirian physiology. The offer of assistance only deepened the aliens' confusion. In their long history, victors never aided the vanquished. The expected outcome was always surrender, tribute, or annihilation. To see an enemy provide healing instead of conquest broke every convention of war they had ever known. Nothing about this human conduct made sense to them. At the engineering console, Pete Morris tapped into the alien networks, something their technology should have rendered impossible. Yet human computers leapt across the gulf effortlessly. Within minutes, he had restored minimal power and life support to several of the most devastated vessels. Then Sullivan unveiled knowledge that sent a cold wave of dread across the Imperial command net. The Liberty's Edge, he revealed, was not alone. 11 other Terran exploration ships had already penetrated this sector, each equipped with equally advanced technology. For months, they had studied local civilizations unseen, learning languages, customs, and patterns of thought. The revelation froze Admiral Vexar's heart more than the annihilation of his fleet. If these humans had observed them for so long without detection, what else did they know? How many Imperial secrets had already been exposed? What weaknesses catalogued? The Admiral realized with sick certainty that the Empire's veil of invincibility had already been pierced. Compromised? How many other civilizations across the region had been quietly studied without their knowledge? Sullivan's revelations only grew darker. He calmly disclosed that Earth's defense fleet numbered over 3,000 warships, each one superior even to the Liberty's Edge. The declaration carried no arrogance, no threats, merely fact. The message was simple. Humanity was not only more technologically advanced, but it dwarfed the Zaharian Empire's military might in sheer numbers. To reinforce the point, Lisa Jang engaged the Liberty's advanced sensor array, demonstrating the reach of human engineering. She began remotely repairing crippled alien ships, manipulating molecular-level tools with precision. Systems sparked back to life, weapons that had been reduced to wreckage reassembled in minutes before stunned. Zapirian eyes. What they had assumed destroyed beyond recovery was restored by techniques that appeared like sorcery. At the same time, Dr. Robinson opened direct communication with several alien medics, calmly sharing treatment protocols for their wounded. Her mastery of xenobiology let her adapt human methods to reptilian physiology, healing injuries and stabilizing conditions the Zephyrians had believed incurable. Their disbelief gave way to quiet awe. The parade of capability did not stop there. Dan Parker stepped forward, broadcasting flawlessly in dozens of alien tongues. Some dialects were so obscure the Zephyrians had never even encountered them before. The message was undeniable. Humans had traveled widely, contacted countless peoples, gathering languages, forging connections, and weaving themselves into the galactic fabric long before the Empire had realized. Finally, Captain Sullivan made his decisive move. He offered the Zephyrian Empire the chance to establish formal diplomatic relations with humanity. Trade, mutual defense, and regular talks on boundaries, all placed on the table. His words carried no gloating. He spoke as though he regarded the Empire as equals, despite having just dismantled their illusion of supremacy. He stressed again that humanity had no interest in empire or domination. Earth possessed abundant resources of its own and preferred exploration and discovery over conquest. But Sullivan was clear. Should human worlds or vessels be threatened, retaliation would come swiftly and decisively. Admiral Vexar felt trapped. His once proud fleet now sat helpless, dependent entirely on the mercy of those they had tried to crush. Yet this enemy, so easily capable of annihilation, spoke of peace and partnership. Vexar had trained his whole life for war. Never had he faced a foe who extended friendship instead of fire. As human crews restored the battered Imperial ships, Sullivan composed his next step, a direct communication to the Zayan government. He requested clearance for additional human vessels to enter the sector, establishing permanent embassies and missions. The age of human seclusion was over, a new galactic power had arrived, and the balance of local authority would never be the same. Word of Vexar's defeat raced faster than couriers could carry it. Within hours of his emergency transmission, every major world of the Zephyrian Empire knew the unthinkable truth. Their most powerful fleet had been obliterated by a single unknown ship. Panic erupted as ministers scrambled to understand how. Centuries of military dominance had evaporated in one afternoon. In the heart of the capital, Emperor Zakthul brooded on his crystal throne, ancient scales shadowed with fury and fear. Around him gathered the High Council, their voices low and uneasy as reports streamed in from the Kepler sector. The Emperor had ruled for more than 2 centuries, but never had he faced a crisis of this scale. The Minister of War, a hulking figure, scarred from countless battles, roared that the reports must be flawed. No solitary vessel, even under Vexar, could possibly destroy an entire fleet. He demanded reinforcements be dispatched immediately to crush the intruder and rescue survivors. But Intelligence Director Valmore stepped forward with revelations that froze the chamber. Long-range scans had already detected several more unidentified vessels within Imperial borders. Each radiated the same impossible signatures as the one that had humbled Vexar's armada. Humanity was not acting alone. They were already embedded across the Empire's own territory. Worse still, Valmore's operatives had uncovered troubling truths. Human technology was not merely advanced. It functioned on principles utterly alien to Zephyrian science. Their ships could vanish at will. Their weapons struck with pinpoint accuracy, disabling specific systems at impossible ranges. Their shields absorbed energies that could crack continents. As these words fell, Emperor Zakthul's unease deepened. For 300 years, the Zephyrian Empire had spread through conquest, taking and consuming as it pleased. Their civilization rested on a foundation of superior firepower, unchallenged in the region. Now, for the first time, they faced an adversary beyond their comprehension, one who did not seek conquest, yet possessed the power to annihilate them utterly. Firepower had once seemed the answer to every problem, yet now the Empire's proud. Fleets faced adversaries whose technology reduced their most advanced weapons to little more than crude relics. In the Kepler sector, Captain Sullivan pressed on with his humanitarian mission among the crippled Imperial ships. Human medical specialists worked shoulder to shoulder with alien physicians, tending the wounded with advanced techniques that to Zephyrian medics appeared nothing short of miraculous. Dr. Robinson had already established treatment hubs aboard 3 damaged warships, her mastery. New orders soon reached Captain Sullivan through quantum-linked channels that pierced the speed of light. Earth Command had authorized additional diplomatic ships to transit into Zephyrian space, carrying the personnel and resources necessary to establish permanent embassies on key Imperial worlds. Humanity was making clear its intent to secure its place as a recognized force in interstellar politics. Reports also confirmed similar encounters unfolding in other quadrants, where human exploratory fleets had stumbled across dozens of alien civilizations, many older, some wealthier, but none possessing humanity's strange, unmatched capabilities. In short time, Earth had become known as a formidable, almost mythical new actor on the galactic stage. On the Imperial capital, the High Council convened without pause. Veteran commanders, who had dedicated their entire careers to conquest and subjugation, now found themselves forced into unfamiliar discussions, how to defend their dominion against an enemy they could not possibly overwhelm. For the first time in the Empire's storied rule, their leaders contemplated negotiating not from dominance, but from weakness. Suddenly, the Foreign Affairs Ministry, once relegated to ceremonial duties in a conquest-driven regime, rose to prominence as the most vital arm of government. Its clerks and ministers scrambled to learn everything they could of human culture, politics, and diplomacy, desperately studying customs and protocols in hopes of avoiding disastrous missteps. The challenge was staggering: how to speak with a species whose might was unassailable, yet whose ambitions seemed genuinely guided by restraint rather than conquest. Even Emperor Thule, who had once preached endless expansion, came to a decision that days earlier would have been inconceivable. He instructed his diplomats to begin formal negotiations with humanity. The Empire would learn to coexist with these strangers, beings whose divine technology was tempered by a morality that appeared sincere. Far from the capital, Admiral Vexar readied his battered fleet for the long return voyage. Thanks to human intervention, his ships were restored not merely to fighting trim, but to a condition superior to their original state. Yet he knew that material repairs could not mend the deeper wound to imperial pride. He alone would have to explain to the Council how utterly overmatched their vaunted armadas had proven to be. His encounter with Liberty's Edge had marked a turning point, the death of one era and the dawn of another. Aboard his bridge, Captain Sullivan watched silently as the Imperial fleet set its course home. His mission of exploration and peace had succeeded beyond any hope. Humanity had revealed itself not as a race of conquerors, but as protectors, advocates of peace and diplomacy in a galaxy long accustomed to war. Liberty's Edge turned gracefully toward its next destination, a star where human sensors had already registered signs of intelligent life. Behind them, the Zephyrians carried a message for their empire, that a new species had arisen, one that would redefine the balance of power across known space. In the months that followed, human emissaries would arrive on dozens of alien worlds. Embassies would rise in glittering capitals, trade treaties would be inked, cultural exchanges launched, and defensive pacts forged. A galaxy long divided by conquest and fear would learn that Earth's people preferred bridges to walls, creation over destruction. Thus began humanity's true age of expansion into galactic civilization, not heralded by thunderous cannons, but by the measured voice of reason. With an open hand rather than a clenched fist, they offered friendship to those who had once been enemies. and those who had thought themselves masters of the stars learned there were forces far greater than any they had imagined.